So it was because you messed up that everybody else had to exercise too? Is that what it was?
No,
These were all insubordinates?
no. All day long you're doing discipline things, everybody as a group. But then I got awarded extra people.
Oh, I see. Okay, afterwards.
They got to stay at the barracks.
So you were by yourself?
Oh, no, there was a bunch from other barracks.
Okay.
I remember those days. When we were doing push-ups, some of the guys were cheating while the company commanders were walking back and forth, and when they turned their back, they stopped doing push-ups. They didn't realize that there was guys up on the balcony watching. You are awarded another night of beach.
Okay, so that's the military. I wasn't in the military, so I was kind of, I'm young enough not to have either that or I never volunteered. So you volunteered, right? Because I didn't think there was a draft for you then. Okay. So, thanks, Steve. They figured if you had too much exercise next time, you would not have the energy to disobey the commands or follow them to the letter. So, okay. I was going to do something else too here, but I think our time is, try to keep it down. I will go really quick. I was going to do special music, but I don't think, I did find something interesting. Anybody know the song Until Then? Do you know who wrote it? Stuart Hamblin. And do you know who he was? He was one of the first singing cowboys. Lived out in California. He was in a song it said the Beverly Hillbillies, and I don't know if that was the series or if it was something before that. I'm not sure. He was a candidate for president. Yeah. He was well liked. He converted to the Christian under Billy Graham, and so then he started writing some songs, and I didn't know that until I saw his name. I said, well, let me see who he is, because I named it didn't mean anything to me. So very interesting. So you never know. So he went from, singing cowboy songs to writing Christian music. So, and he just died in 1989. So some of us remember 1989. So let's begin our worship service. I'm going to have a short prayer, and we're going to get into a Bible study this morning. So let's bow our heads this morning. Our kind Heavenly Father, your goodness is shown to us every day. Be with us now this morning as we open your word. May your Spirit be with us and guide us. I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. So let's open our Bibles to Matthew 24. Matthew 24. Anybody knows what Matthew 24 is? Right off the top of your head. So signs of the times, kind of. So let's look at Matthew 24. And the scripture reading, I believe, that was last week. I can't remember which one I picked. Verse 3, yes. So Matthew 24, verse 3 says, and he sat upon the Mount of Olives. The disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the signs of thy coming and the end of the world? So, what were the disciples referring to when they say, "What will these things be?" So, so we'll have to go back a little bit to see what the disciples were talking about. If you remember back, I think in chapter 23, we refer to it as the triumphal entry. Okay? So Jesus had just come to Jerusalem for the last time, riding on a colt, which meant what? So the kings would come riding on a colt, coming into the city. The disciples were there and going like, he's finally going to do it. He is going to make himself king, and here is the sign for us. He's riding on a colt, coming into Jerusalem, and what did all the people do? Okay, they were praising Jesus, right? The children were praising Jesus. The scribes and Pharisees didn't like that. They said, can't you make them stop? Okay, remember all that. So the disciples are kind of getting built up. The kingdom's coming. Jesus is going to come into his kingdom. And this is a sign. He is allowing us to do this, which means we are about ready to throw off the yoke of the Romans. Okay? And then, as he goes along, as he teaches in the temple, all of a sudden he says what? See this temple? One stone will not be left on another. And the disciples are going like, what does this mean? And that's why they say, what is this? What are you saying? What's it going to be? They figured if the temple was going to fall down, it'd be the end of the world, right? They were looking for Christ to come. So today we're going to look at these signs. And I just follow this kind of. So we're going to look at signs today. And speaking of the Navy, we have a picture here of a boat that Kevin's going to whip up for us here. There we go. Anyone guess what this boat is? I think it's the right one. This was before World War II, Pearl Harbor. It was, as far as I can tell, that was the Arizona battleship. You bring up the battleships, it's like, there's a lot of different battleships, but I think that's the Arizona. I don't know, what do they call those towers on the top of those towers on the conning bridge? Flying bridge? Okay, they look like they're flying up there. Are people up there? Looks like there's windows and stuff up there. So, the captain's not up there. Okay. Okay, so they're more of the lookouts. Okay, so before World War II, radar was just coming in to use. Okay, they had radar, but they were still training on the radar. All right, so this, as you can tell, this is the Pearl Harbor Day scenario. Okay. They had a few signs before the attack. Okay? One of them was somebody spotted a Japanese submarine fairly close to Hawaii. Okay? It's like, what was the Japanese submarine? And it's a long way out there, right? From Japan to Hawaii. So they use this radar, what I understand, from like 11 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning to it was 7 o'clock in the morning, like 11 at night to 7 in the morning. I guess that's when you would use radar because you can't see anything as well. So at 7 o'clock, they'd turn off the radars because they had reconnaissance planes and stuff. So evidently there was someone training on radar after they had gone off their shift. And so someone kept the radar on at 7 o'clock, and they saw something on the radar. They said, look at all these blips on the radar. What is that? So, and these are people just training. And they go like, well, we better talk to our commander. So they talked to the commander, and they said, oh, don't worry about it. We're expecting a bunch of B-29s. So we think they're coming in. Now, I don't know which way they were coming from, if that was suspicious or not, but at any rate, they ignored it. So, and you can flip a picture for me. And the rest, of course, is history. They ignored those signs, and the Japanese were attacking. They saw them on the radar, but they didn't realize what they were. And that was probably before transponders and things, because now planes have transponders in them, and they can tell who you are. But I'm sure they didn't have that back then. They could just tell that there was planes coming in. So a disaster, lots of battleships went down, people lost their lives. But there were signs. There were signs for them that something was amiss. And I thought, well, maybe they didn't figure that there were really going to be a war. So I took a really rabbit trail, and I read a lot about it. And it's like the U.S. and Japan had been talking, but the talks had broke down. And they thought there could be a war. So they knew that it was possible. They had made some preparations, but they didn't expect an attack on there. So, and that's what makes it a surprise, right? You don't expect it. So, one interesting thing I read is the Japanese Navy or Army or the commander of the military said, we can win this war if it doesn't last over 6 months to a year. And he said, if it lasts longer than that, we're finished. So we know the rest of the story on that. So it was interesting. So let's you can go to the next slide. We don't have a presenter with us. This is a representation of the temple. Okay, speaking of the temple in Jesus' time. So we can see, I don't know if people are familiar, but the middle part is what we would consider the temple, right? There's the outer court, the holy place, and you can't see the most holy place, but center is that. And then when they talk about the outer court, they talk about all that surrounding that inside those walls. So, and then on your right or your left, that's a porch up there. I think that's where a lot of people would observe what was going down there. I think that's where like the Romans could sit up there, but they couldn't go down inside. I don't think they could go down into the outer court even, but they could sit up there and watch. So it was kind of a viewing area. And then I believe up in that corner was the Antonio Fortress. You've heard that, right? That's where the apostles were put in the Antonio Fortress. They said I think it was Peter, in the Antonio Fortress. All made out of stone. The prison was made out of solid rock. No way to get out of there. That's the Antonio Fortress. I believe right there. It's right connected to the temple. And you can see it's well protected, right? You just can't jump over those walls. They're huge. So, and that's where some of the Jews took refuge when the Romans were sieging. So they had to get through the outside walls and then try to get into the temple itself. So, I think that from what I remember from before, my memory's wacko, it was like 42 acres in there. So it was a big area. It wasn't, so you could do some things. And that's where they were probably selling sheep and stuff out in that outer court area. I always pictured it inside the courtyard, but it was probably on that outside court yard there. So, so Jesus is coming to the temple He's probably teaching in the outer court area. And let's look at Matthew 23:38. What does that say? Matthew 24:38. No, I'm sorry, that's not the right one. No. Let's go back to 23:38. That's what it is. 23:38 says. Go back one chapter, 23:38 says, "Behold, your house is left unto you desolate." How many times did Jesus cleanse the temple? Do we know? How many times did Jesus, quotes, cleanse the temple? 2 times. The first time, he threw out the money changers, correct? And in John 2:16 would be the first time he cleansed the temple. Matthew 2:16 says, let's look at John 2:16. So John 2, that would be at the beginning of his ministry. Says, "And he said unto them that sold doves, Take these things hence, make not my Father's house an house of merchandise." Okay? That was the first time. He called it my Father's house. Here, what did he call it? Your house. It says not mine anymore, it's your house. That would be kind of a sign, right? Okay. And now look, now we'll do Matthew 24:3 that says, "And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives," this is after they left the temple, "the disciples came unto him privately." Why did they come privately unto him? Why was this a private thing? Okay. Partly, but why was it private? They said, Jesus, tell us this, because if you were talking about destroying the temple, that was what do you call it? Can't think of it. That was something you didn't say. That would be taken like treason. That was the word I was looking for. Pardon me? Almost, but it would be treason because you were talking about the destruction of the temple, okay? And that was not going to happen. And if you started talking about it, even thinking about it, or say someone's going to destroy the temple, that was kind of a treasonous thing. That would be like someone going to the United States, says, we're going to, take out the Capitol or something like that. And you know something I don't know, so that's treason against the government, right? Kind of. So that's why they said privately, because we don't want anybody to overhear what we're talking about, the temple being torn down, because that would be treason. Treasonous talk. So they said, tell us, when shall these things be? In Jesus' time, they thought maybe when the Messiah would come, he would go away for a while, and then he would come back to set up his kingdom. Why would they think that? There's 2 parables that Jesus told. Remember in Luke 19, he told a parable of the pounds, or it might say the talents there, I don't know. I'm looking at King James. Luke 19:12-15. If I can find it. It says, And he said, therefore, a certain nobleman, okay, he went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. So they said, oh, who is this nobleman but Jesus, right? He could go to a far country, receive his kingdom, and then return. And he called his 10 servants and delivered them 10 pounds and said unto them, occupy till I come. So we had 10 servants, 10 pounds. Everybody got a pound. And then we know the rest of the story. Some of them invested their pounds, some of them made more pounds, and some of them just hid him and didn't do anything with them, okay? So that's one. So I said, well, Jesus must be the nobleman, right? He came, got his kingdom, came back, okay? The time there wasn't like the end of the world, I guess. This is what they were thinking. Another one is the husbandman in Matthew 21, okay, right before this. In Matthew 21, 33 through 40 says, 21, 33. And it says, here another parable. There was a certain householder which planted a vineyard and hedged it about, digged a wine press in it, and built a tower. And then he let it out to the husbandman and went into a far country. Okay, here's another. The owner makes it, goes to a far country. And when the time of the fruit drew near, he sent his servants to the husbandman that they might receive the fruits of it. And the husbandman took his servants and beat one, killed another, and stoned another. Again he sent another servant, more than the first, and they did unto him likewise. But last of all he sent unto them his son, saying, they will reverence my son. But when the husbandmen saw the son, they said unto themselves, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and let him seize his inheritance. And they caught him, cast him out of the vineyard, and slew him. When the Lord therefore of the vineyard cometh, what will he do to this husbandman? So here's the owner leaves, tries to send servants, and then he's going to come back. Okay, so they said Jesus is going to probably leave and then come back. They didn't hear the crucified part and all the rest of that stuff. They weren't on that line. So they wanted to know, what is Let's look at Matthew 24:36. I guess they didn't hear this part. It says, and we all know this text very well. But the day and hour knoweth some people, no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. So, along the vein of the last part about where Jesus is going to go and come back again, let's look at Acts 1:6. Acts 1:6. Jesus is about ready to ascend to heaven. And what did the disciples say? Acts 1:6. Acts 1 verse 6 says, when they therefore were come together, they asked him, saying, Lord, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom of Israel? So what were they asking? You've died, you come back to life. Are you going to restore Israel now? So they still, even after all that, they still had the idea that Israel was going to be restored. Is that right? They thought, okay, now you've come back to life. Let's restore Israel now. Was that the case? All right. So, no one knows the day or the hour. What does Matthew 24, 32, 33 say? 24, 32, and 33. Another parable that we can relate to. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. So we can tell by looking outside, things are greening up, the trees are starting to bud out. We're hopeful summer's coming. Sooner or later, it's going to come. But we know it's near, right? We can see things happening outside. Daffodils are up. Some of the trees are starting to flower. So we know that that time is near, okay? Okay, another sure sign, dandelions. Okay. Let's look at Matthew 24, 8. 24, 8. Says, all these things are the beginning of sorrows. And what are these things we're talking about? Let's go back up to verse 6 and 7. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. Do we need to say anything about that? We are here. Wars and rumors of wars. And nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, and we can go into all kinds of statistics on that. Pestilences, we know all about pestilences, right? And earthquakes in diverse places. And then, as we said, these are the beginning of sorrows. So what is sorrows? Or sufferings, maybe? It's the beginning of sufferings. So what are some signs in the political world? And that would be the wars, rumors of wars. Signs in the physical world is the famines and the pestilences. Earthquakes, storms, hail. How many saw pictures of hail down in, where was that at? Texas? Missouri? Somewhere. You see the big, yeah, breaking people's windows out in the cars. I don't think anybody got hurt with them. I don't think I'd be out there dodging them, but pretty, I remember when I was a kid, we had some hail. Wasn't that big, but it was golf ball size. And then we have signs. Let's look at no, we'll go clear back to Daniel 12. Daniel 12. This is another verse that we know really well. Daniel 12:4. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book. He's talking about his visions, right? Even until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. What does running to and fro mean? And the knowledge shall be increased. What does that mean? Okay. Okay. Knowledge, and you're talking like scientific knowledge. Scientific knowledge. So, what about knowledge of the scriptures? And what does running to and fro mean? I'm running over here and then I'm running over there? Someone that could be searching the Bible. They're looking through the Bible, looking at this verse, looking at the other verse, and the knowledge of the prophecies will be increased. Remember, Daniel had a vision and they said, this isn't for this time. When is it for? The time of the end. I've only got a page and a half here, so I'm not moving very fast. Then we can look at Matthew 24:7. Is that the one I want? Oh, wait, let's see. I'm sorry, Matthew 24:7. Oh, unless I got that one in there wrong. Anybody know where the verse is? And as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. I must have copied that wrong. No, I'm sorry. I got it right. What does Genesis 6:5 say? And now we're Genesis 6:5. And this is the story of the flood. And it was in the days of Noah. Someone can find that. 38. 24:38. I don't know how I got that mad. So Matthew 24:38 says, for as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark. Right? And what does Genesis 6:5 say? Do we need to go through that at all? For as in the days before the flood, they were eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark. What kind of signs did the people of Noah's time have? Did they have any signs? I mean, they had a sign of Noah preaching. Yeah. Okay, that would probably get your attention a little bit, wouldn't it? It's like, who's putting all those animals in it? And people would say, oh, well, he probably trained them to do that, or somebody probably came up with some explanation. Maybe they put food in there that they liked, and so they were all coming in to get something to eat, which I'm sure they put food in there. So after that, probably everybody said, wow, that's really wild. And then as, things wear on, as you know, all the hype and that kind of dies away, and people say, well, it's probably nothing. We don't want to go in a boat. There's nothing to float this boat on. Okay, we know the story. But they had some signs, right? I guess there was no prophecy about signs, but for 120 years, Noah preached. And so they said, things are going to go on like this forever. We don't see any end of this today. Do we have people today that are saying the same thing? What happened in the Great Disappointment? Yes, but before that, people were talking, Miller had everybody hyped up, right? Like Noah did, that the world was going to come to an end. Right. Some of the people in the churches, if they believed that Jesus was coming soon, what happened? They were disfellowshipped. They said, well, if you're going to hold to this belief, then we can't have you in this church because you're a bad influence on everybody else, I guess. So we would think, it's like, isn't it a good thing that we should want Jesus to come again? Shouldn't we be looking for his coming soon? I guess one thing we know for sure is Jesus is going to come one way or another in our lifetime, right? So as they always say, we have one life to live, and whether it lasts beyond us 300 years or not, when we die, then the judgment, right? As they say. So, you would think that the preachers would be excited that people were thinking about the second coming, right? To change your whole way of looking at things. Okay, he's coming soon. So instead of thinking about temporal things, the things on this earth, now we're thinking about his coming. But it didn't work that way. A lot of them said, no, we can't have that. If it doesn't come, then we're going to be laughing stocks, and we can't tell the end. And they bring up that text, no one knows the day or the hour. But they didn't bring up the text about, we know when spring is coming, and summer's coming, because we see signs around us. So, Kevin, you want to do the next slide, please? I got to wrap this up somehow. So, do we know what that is? The fulfillment of prophecy, kind of. Although I don't think they prophesied that the Muslims would put their Dome of the Rock on the temple site. But can you see the walls around there? And remember the walls around the courtyard? And so what's where probably the temple was, which they think the temple was right there. So the Dome of the Rock, which is the Muslim mosque. So this is for those who don't know. That's the Dome of the Rock. It's a Muslim mosque. Back in the day when a country or a nation would come, they would set up their temple or their god, whoever they worshipped, on the place that they conquered. So it's like, our God is bigger than your God. And to prove it, we're putting a temple right over it to show it. So that's what that is. So everybody's kind of fighting over that, and they're looking for the third temple, right? There was Solomon's temple, there's Herod's temple, and they want to put a third temple up there so they can bring in Christ's second coming. That's a lot. That's a whole other story. But that's the the Dome of the Rock, a Muslim mosque, I guess it would be called a mosque. So anyway, I've watched some videos. You can go inside the courtyard in there and walk around and look at stuff, and it's really interesting to look at. There's places where you can kind of go down around the base and see all the structures underneath there that's been down there, and they're excavating it out, ritual baths and all that kind of stuff that you can't really see there. But and the huge stones that they used to build that. And when they said one stone will not be left on another, we all know the story of that, right? Titus sieged Jerusalem. He didn't want to destroy the temple. It was one of the 7 wonders of the world. He's like, we want to keep that. We don't want to destroy it. What happened? The Jews were very belligerent. They didn't want to give it up. And the soldiers, and they had to start siege, and the soldiers were tired of all this stuff. They came in and basically burned the temple down. All the gold in there, where did the gold go? It melted, because I don't know what the melting point of gold is, but it's not super high. So gold melted, kind of went down in the cracks between the rocks, and now the soldiers became gold miners. And they pulled all the stones apart to catch any gold that had gone in between the cracks. And so they tore the whole thing down. Titus was not happy about it, but there wasn't much he could do. So the fire got started, and they decided it was time to burn it down Get the gold. Everybody can have some. You have to just look for it. The spoils of war. Got another picture up there. I'm going to whip through. We already talked about Noah and the ark. The animals coming in, and then switch up. So we got the next picture, which is kind of a maybe. There we go. With the rainbow thrown in there to make us hopeful, okay? So we know the signs of his coming. How do we get ready for his coming? We listen. What's Revelation 3:20 say? Okay, everybody knows that text, right? Behold, I stand at the door and knock. And what? Right, if anybody hears, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man or woman hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and will sup with him and he with me. So Christ is knocking at the door. What do we have to do? We have to answer that door and open it, right? He's not going to make us do anything, but he is coming at our heart's door, so to speak. So, how should we live in preparation for the return of Jesus? Let's look at Mark 13:33. Lots of threes. Mark 33. Says, take heed, watch and pray, for ye know not when the time is. And then we can read the rest of that. So, because for the Son of Man is a man taking a far journey, who left his house and gave authority to his servants, and then goes through that husbandman parable, told a little bit differently in Mark. So, anyways, is there any doubt of the signs that we have around us? We've had COVID. Now we've got more war in the Middle East. Earthquakes, hail, horrible weather. Yep. I'm trying to think the last war kind of started when, well, it's been going on for a long time, but when they went into Israel and took all those people in October a couple years ago. Took them prisoner, hostages, I guess you would call them. And then it's just spiraled out of control. Where we are now, you know. So we've joined the fight now. I don't know. There's only one answer, right? Right. He's. What are we told? The Spirit of God is being slowly withdrawn. If it wasn't for God, we would be all dead now, right? The Spirit of God is here, keeping people from being like the devil. The devil would soon, he's here to kill and destroy. But Christ is here to save us. But we're told that it would be slowly and we see now it's crazy, and people are looking for answers, and that's a whole nother story. But we see the signs, and let's not be like those in Pearl Harbor who see the signs and explain them away, saying, it's probably something else. But as he told the disciples, he told us the signs of the end, and that's not all the signs, and there's lots more that we have seen. So, and you can flip us to the last place. So we have one more sign to come, and that is the next. What? Yeah. Second coming? Well, there's other signs. Can you flip it to the last one? Or there we go. Had that end with a good slide. Okay. So I guess I was going to ask like an appeal, but I'm not a real appeal person. But how many people are ready for Jesus to come again? Anybody ready? You raise your hand? Yeah? Okay. I'll raise my hand. Raise two hands. So we should be ready all the time, and hopefully we can be able to let others know and lead them to a relationship with Christ. So let's end kind of with our closing song.